I'm Michael,
And I'm Drew.
and this is the Outward Realms podcast. Welcome to episode 2. We are back together to go ahead and talk about a few fun things. We're going to go ahead and start things off by talking about tactics a little bit. So, we had a couple of questions from the LVO comp event, and I thought it might be nice to touch on uh, two particular things to help out our players who may need that. One is dealing with something that we, the playtesters, have been calling the Batra Easter Egg, which is where you have a Batra tank, either one of them, either construct, with a unit, a cloaked unit inside of it.
Yep.
So, like a terrible frog-based Kinder Egg of sadness
I was gonna
for
say
anyone who cracks it open.
a frog with knives come out, right?
Yeah.
Yay! Oops.
Instead of a delicious candy, it is a delicious set of blades, which we don't want. That's not good. No one wants that except the bocce player. So what we've done traditionally to interact with the Easter egg is rather than attempt to destroy the tank, we engage it. So we take something that we're reasonably sure won't kill it. I'm looking at most augment infantry, a things that don't have melee attacks like nightfall flying things
Okay.
is a great one. A
Sure.
worker swarm.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because the big bases and all
Yeah,
that,
I
and
mean
you're
they're just
surrounded.
you can put one model into
Oh, that's
engagement
also
range,
true
right?
for the
Yeah,
engagement.
you
Exactly.
will you will you will not kill it.
Yep. Yep.
And so what that leaves the botcher player with is a conundrum because what they can uh, either disengage that tank and then disembark something, which takes up all of its activation points, or they could disengage and shoot. Now, if they take um, the new subfaction advanced roster rules, actually is what it's called, and they choose the disengage for one, you could disengage and then shoot and then drop something
And then
off.
drop them out.
But
Yeah.
in no scenario do the contents of that sinister treat get to mess with you in that one inactivation,
Right.
right? And that's how we have dealt with the Easter egg. The Easter egg also uh, it's a little different from the realm, who are the only other faction with a transport, because they have the free disembark.
Oh, that's right. They do, huh?
Yeah, and so they can dump their contents out a little easier, although they only have 2 action points. So if they don't have the -1 cost disengage or a major nearby,
Right. They'll suffer for it.
yeah, that's the downside of that big old tank. Is if you walk up and touch that tank, you have really debilitated it
All
in some
those
way.
all those single units looking to engage and be
Yeah,
married.
and I get asked a lot, like, why do you have some of these units like sort of the way they are? And one of the reasons that you one of the ways you can use them is you can engage things in order to tie them up. Something important to remember about Outward Realms is there's a tempo in the game, a concept of the back and forth nature where you are in addition to trying to score as many of your own points as possible and get through and
Right,
get
right.
success, you want your opponent to use their activations either the way you want them to or as inefficiently as
As they
possible.
can. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, and you can dictate that tempo using your own models to some extent for sure. And I think at a higher level of play, you start to see and calculate those things, right? Where you're like, ooh, if I do this, I'm pretty sure they'll do that. Then I'll do this, and pretty sure they'll do that, et cetera, et cetera. Because you already know what their additionals are, and you both have the same mission secondary. So what you're
Right.
trying to do is pretty obvious.
Yeah. And even then when you just mentioned it, the Batra player also, right, if the tank is close to dying, right,
Yeah,
they'll shoot it up the board because they want it destroyed so they
yeah,
can pop out that unit and then suddenly they get to activate, right?
correct.
Or not
Right,
suddenly, but like you could, yeah.
correct. But then yeah, and if they're cloaked, your ways of interacting with them can be limited.
Yes.
And so that is one way to deal with that. that issue. Another thing I wanted to bring up was the murder pinball, the Queenling, the Hexagona's favorite
Mm-hmm.
friend,
Oh,
and
she's
the
so
most
good.
powerful melee character in the game. Using the Queenling effectively is critical to playing Hexagona well and getting the most mileage out of it. If your Queenling is not in the thick of things by like
Midway through turn two.
early turn
Early
two,
turn,
midway through
yeah.
turn two, you are not getting your maximum value
Yeah,
out of
out of
her.
her. Yep.
She is more than capable of staying protected with the commander trait. So she can move up, spend one move up, and then take cover, perhaps, and then also use move command to drag another unit with her
Yes.
to go ahead
Yep.
and make sure that she stays protected. So she never has to really be alone if you plan for it well. I've also seen Hexagona players double move command early to push things up the board and help the Hexagona who have a natively lower action point and activation limit.
Yes.
Move command is designed to help with that. You can, of course, just activate a Queenling who's sitting in the backfield, surrounded by friends. You can double move command the two units up, and then all of a sudden you've really,
Pushed everything forward.
yeah. And with Metabolic Overdrive, or with
Metabolic boost.
Metabolic Boost
Yep.
now, Overdrive is something used in 40k, and
Yep.
we didn't want to use the same name.
Terminology.
Yes, in
Yeah.
terminology.
Of
Uh,
course.
Metabolic plus our ability is better. So metabolic boost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you mean you double your charge? What? Uh, in our case, the double move for the engage is very very strong.
Yeah, and
Um,
it goes back to that murder pinball too, right? The pinball
yeah,
works both ways. The queenling wants to be near a hex unit to help move wounds
yep,
off onto them.
yep,
That allows her to then pinball off of them into an enemy unit, and then the real pinball starts, right? Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and because the characters don't get to metabolic boost,
yes,
you have to think about that when you're moving that stuff up. But I just wanted to bring up those two things in particular because I feel like they're easy mistakes to make when you're just starting out.
absolutely.
And as I come up with more things like that, or if people have questions, I will be happy to answer them as best I can in future episodes. And if we can, as time goes on, I will even try to interview people who are good at the game, who
Oh,
have done
sure.
well,
Yeah,
and make sure that you get to hear directly from them.
from the players. Yeah.
Yeah, because what something I've noticed is early on, the Batra are strong. If two people are not very skilled and they're roughly the same skill level, the Batra are strong.
Okay.
If two people are very skilled
Hmm.
and they're playing whatever they want, the Batra actually lose a little bit of effectiveness there because people have good
Yeah,
counterplay
they know their
against them.
tricks.
They know what to do.
Hmm.
And a piece of that that's missing and didn't really get represented in the competitive play, to no one's fault, I might add, because we didn't bring people extra stuff, and most people are just getting their things, getting it all together. I was just really happy to see army boxes on the board fully assembled and painted. That's all
Hmm.
I can ask for. But the roster mechanic is leaving those extra units to the side, right? And in a matchup against the Batra, especially for like Realm, having a roster that's a little more flexible for that matchup is very helpful.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you might want to take some of those exosuits, right?
Right.
Because and then a little bit of screening, like maybe 2 units of exosuits or 3 units of exosuits and 2 heavies, or 3 heavies and 2 units of exosuits, and then some screening models to go ahead and hold objectives, and then act as that protection layer so that when the hunters or stalkers slam into your infantry and pick them
Right.
up, you can then counterpunch with that really strong um, exosuit and heavy exosuit
Yeah.
stuff, which is what they're good at. They're not good at, well, they're okay at running into the face of something. They're better at jumping in after something's already started.
Right. They come in and help finish off the thing, and they spring the trap. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I see people it was really interesting to counter the sub factions people chose. Like I was very interested in that. For that level of play, House Ahmed called, and it wants your attendance. It wants your
Yep,
loyalty.
yep.
The reroll ones to hit all the time for exosuits in close combat in melee is really strong, right?
Yeah, we talked about that too in the game in the very first game that we played. We didn't use sub factions, but we every time you rolled dice, you were like, "Hey, look at all these ones, right? Oh, wouldn't it have been nice,
Yeah,
right?"
wouldn't
Like
it have been nice?
exactly. So no, very interesting, very cool.
So I wanted to bring that up for folks because it comes to mind, and there's a lot of sideboard and interesting synergy there. Also, interestingly, at both events, especially for the comp event, considering that the Nightfall won the TTS online event, Nightfall did not show up. We had a Nightfall
Oh,
army ready for
so
people.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I can assure you that it is a totally different style of game against the Nightfall,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm excited to see him.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the next time that we run something like this, everyone shows up to the party. And they should. I mean, we have things available in the online
Oh, sure, of
store,
course.
and people have more things
Yeah,
now.
they're there. But of course, we always know with every other game as well, some factions are more popular than others, at least as
Yeah,
of right now.
yeah, of
So,
course.
yeah.
Well, and everyone has their favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's talk about the Batra. So, like the last episode, we sort of talked a little overview of the realm. Here's a little overview for the Batra. The Batra are the first of the races that kind of broke out of the Nightfall's oppressive regime of extermination.
Right. Came upon them.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were very lucky. In the sense that they developed in a stellar cluster that was reasonably close to many other worlds that developed life around the same time frame.
Yep, yeah.
So the first time they turned on their radio telescopes, they heard lots of communication. There was lots of evidence of aliens.
Mm-hmm. What's that? Yeah, exactly.
No, and they're very cautious, so they just listened. They
Yep.
didn't. They were creeping. They just
Yep,
watched. They
yep.
didn't
Sitting in the corner eating their
sit.
pizza.
That's right.
Yep.
That's what they were doing. They just listened in to everyone's phone calls, and then uh, and were preparing to build a means to go visit their nearest neighbor, or at least, if not visit, go check it out. But what they noticed was, over as time went on, this was taking them a long time to develop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The uh, the radio waves, the signals started disappearing one by one.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so by the time they managed to get their FTL and their ship operational, they were down to one. And
Which was just them or one other one?
well, just the one signal left.
Oh
And so
dang.
they sent their ship to that system, and they discovered the Nightfall and what the Nightfall do. And that was clearly what was happening.
Right. Yeah.
And so that ship uh, sacrificed itself. It did not return to the Batra homeworld. It sent a stealth probe back with the information, and then went a different direction so that if the Nightfall detected them, it wouldn't
Yep.
drag them back home.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And they were obviously the Batra were horrified by this,
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, oh my god, what is this thing?
appropriately disgusted by what they saw, but they knew they had to protect their world. And so they built this thing called the Great Lattice, which is a set of satellites that completely encompass their world and project a holographic version of their world in a prehistoric state and prevent any electromagnetic communication from entering or leaving.
So if you walked up to it and you walked through it, you were like, oh crap. But if you didn't walk up to it and
Right.
walk through it, you were like,
Well,
telescopically, yeah.
telescopically, they can't see anything. It
Mm-hmm.
never looks like it never changed,
Yeah.
and that bought them lots of time. They built up their fleet, and they started this campaign of pruning the Nightfall fleets. They went through and they
Yep.
started breaking them down, and that's how humanity ended up surviving. Was the first time the Nightfall stopped by our star system, we were upright hominids. The second time they were supposed to stop by, but they never made it. We had generated FTL and gotten out.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, thanks, Froggy
Woo!
friends,
Thanks, Frog.
who are
Yep.
now killing wholesale. Let's pass the savings on to you.
Exactly, exactly. So we're gonna come out there and kill you too, just because. Boo.
Boo.
Exactly.
So the Batra's prime motivation for fighting over these golden worlds is they're amphibians, and they're very susceptible. Their eggs are very susceptible to pollution and changes,
Oof.
and they need even their own industrialization heavily threatened their race.
That's crazy.
And they were pretty careful, but even so,
But even
they're
then,
pretty delicate
yeah.
to things like radiation, heavy metals.
Mm-hmm.
That not previously they were pretty hardy
Right. We're talking like
in a pristine state,
we're talking like
right?
Black Sabbath, heavy metal, and
That's right.
yep,
Yeah,
yep. Okay,
paranoid.
yep.
Um, no, the we're talking about the non-musical heavy metals like lead and other things that
Right, right. Of
get into the
course, of
water
course.
supply and plastics and stuff. And so they were conscientious of this from the get-go, especially once they noticed their reproductive rates being heavily impacted.
Right. Yep. Of course.
But they started going to these pristine worlds which have no development at all, and they're able to reproduce on these. Like, it's a subset of these golden worlds. Unfortunately, what their tendency to is they build these colonies where they can reproduce, big cloaked colonies. They just sort of do their thing. Well, when a human colony ship comes in and doesn't see anything and then starts setting up shop, that's not what you want if you're Batra.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I'm sure there's some realm ships that were like the kamikaze accidentally flew into them and was like, "What is this? Oh my god!" And then it's like,
Well,
"Oh,
and
all out war."
and at first, especially early on in
Mm-hmm.
the Batra human conflict, the Batra didn't know what to make of the humans.
Oh, sure.
Because when we
Yeah.
start our colonies, it doesn't actually look like we're doing too much.
Right.
But then we start, doing what we do. We'll mine, we'll do all this, and
Absolutely.
it starts to be impactful.
Yeah. The industry, the
Correct.
industrial side of it
Yeah,
comes
the
out.
Batra is very careful to do most of their heavy industry in space now, but we don't follow those rules. So
Absolutely.
we like things that are easy to access, and it's much easier to mine on a planet than it is an asteroid, and so we
Mm-hmm.
go do the thing. Not in terms of the materials gained or raw access, but just in terms of you don't need a spacesuit. If you get a hole in your coverall, you don't die.
Right. Well,
Like,
it's a different lifestyle, right? So the
yeah,
Batra are all more about doing their industry in space to keep the world that they have the reproduction capabilities
yeah,
on safe and
yep.
cool.
And they're at war with the Nightfall and have been the entire time for just because the Nightfall do exterminate all sentient life.
Yep.
So not, and they find the Hexagoda pretty repulsive because the Hexagoda are the only ones terraforming. So
Oh, interesting.
humans aren't terraforming really. The Batra surely do not do it.
Mm.
Um, but the Hexagoda, when they take up root on a planet, they will build terraforming spires and attempt to turn it into a cold methane planet.
Interesting. And
With
that's the environment that they like to live in.
correct.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that's obviously pretty abhorrent too.
Right.
Now there are plenty of cold methane places. I get asked this a little bit, and it's moving into the Hexagoda a tad, but I'll mention it anyway. I get asked like, well, why don't they just go to every cold methane moon and enjoy the life there? And they do. They those are good. The other thing is it's organic fuels. So Earth-like worlds uh, that have anything like like our Earth-like history will have large reserves of oil,
Right.
basically, right?
Yes.
From fossilized early plant life that spent millions of years being compressed. That is the best possible food stuff for the Hexagoda.
Excellent. It's also what they're made of when they die. They they burn, right?
No, they turn to caramel,
Oh,
delicious
they
caramel
do. Yeah.
candies.
Yeah. But for the Easter eggs,
That's right.
of course.
Got something in them. No, the that fuel, that rich organic petrochemical fuel stuff is highly consumable for them, and so they like those Earth-like worlds because they can drain that oil as they're terraforming it.
Makes sense.
And that those on those methane moons, they didn't have those periods of high plant growth and life,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Only Earth-like worlds have done that.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
That's why they're attacking these Earth-like worlds. It's we could go to this other place and spend less effort turning it into a methane moon, but it doesn't have free food in the crust in the
Right.
ground.
Yep. We gotta look for it, and we don't want to look for it.
We want all this free food.
Yeah.
It's right
Yeah.
here, and it makes life easy.
They want to go into the corner of the room with the Batra and the pizza and eat their pizza.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. That's our. They're gonna pour mortar oil all over it, and
All
then
over the
they're gonna eat it. So that's and that the Hexagoda or the Batra have spent all of this time essentially doing those things. They're very ecology driven. They care about they care about the state of their planet or planets that they're on.
hmm
They do their heavy industry in space. They're a little more the older ones are a little more patient. They're a little more careful, cautious. Uh,
Less fighty. Is that a?
well, the young ones are very
The
stabby and
young ones are
punchy,
very stabby. Yeah.
but that's the Batra life cycle is they start as clutchlings. So
What is a clutchling?
yeah,
What do they look
clutchling is a
like?
little Batra.
Oh, nice. Like they're all humanoid. They're not like tadpoles
Well, they
or.
start in a water state, in a tadpolish state,
Oh,
and then molt, and then become a clutchling, which is like a small Batra,
sure.
right? And that's
Okay.
where they get their limbs and they lose
Absolutely.
their tail and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Um, the reproductive cycle is essentially uh, reproduction for the Batra is pretty. It's not it. Well, it's regulated in the sense that they want to control the amount of Batra that are in a particular place.
100%.
So they have these places, and when you're young, so when you are, let's say, between 100 and 200 years old,
Okay.
that's when you're going to mate. That's when you're going to have kids.
Dang, they live for a long time.
Well, I mean, but they live a long time. They live for
Sure.
hundreds of years.
Okay. Okay.
So they do
Excellent.
it when they're early, and they actually go and they have the mating ritual, and then they leave. They're done. Their part of the process is over.
Okay.
The clan who those people were a part of, or maybe clans, if
Right.
they're each part of a different clan, that could
hmm
happen too, come in and they bring in elders who are 500 years old, and
Okay.
they're at the end of their life, and they come in and they raise the clutchlings.
Wow. Oh, okay. And that's where
Yeah,
the high respect, right? Not only for the
yeah.
age, but also the right, like the
Well, they're
father
very
son, that
patient and
sort
they've
of.
seen everything and they think it's kind of fun,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Having all these scrabbling around little things running around.
help remember them the old times, right? Like.
And so the actual biological parents have not a lot of significance to the Batra. They're
Okay.
just like an egg, essentially. Like
Oh,
you,
sure.
if you met your father or mother, your genetic father or mother, it would be very low impact for a Batra.
Absolutely, because there's so many of them, right? Like.
Whereas your clutch parents are like your real parents. They raised you.
Yep.
You've known them their whole life, etc.,
That's
etc.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
that's a cool. That's an interesting aspect of like family ties and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's there, but it's not
It's
as.
different.
It's very different. Absolutely. Cool. Cool.
And they do the so clutches are usually between 50 to 100.
Oh wow. Okay.
So their egg survival rate is quite high now, as you might imagine.
Right. Right.
And these clutches are the family unit. So the family unit is that set of,
Eggs or
well,
clutch.
siblings.
Oh, okay.
Siblings,
Yeah. Of
right?
course.
So that is what one clutch is. It is very common for the Batra like to stay with some members of their clutch their whole life to some extent. It's not like if you in our realm in our like in the realm tank we talked about the crews and stuff. The Batra tank we talk about the crews. Like when I say like a one clutch crew, I'll say like many members or most members or maybe all members are from the same clutch.
Oh, cool. So they'll stick to. Some of them will stick together, or a
Yeah,
lot of them will stick together.
yeah,
You're gonna
yeah.
do this. I want to do
Like
this
on a
too.
small enough spacecraft, like everyone in the crew could be
Could be
from the
from
same
one
clutch. They're
clutch.
all siblings.
Absolutely. Cool.
And what they do is they learn the Batra language, which is a fairly complex language, essentially. But they will often, and with the push of the elders to some extent, often have their own variant or their own clutch based language as well.
That's
So they
awesome.
have a family language
Sure.
that it's just for them, and
Okay.
then they have their main core language.
Wow.
Yeah.
That to me, that excites me most about that because it's so to have all those differences, right? It's like, oh my god, it's almost like real life, right? Like
They're complicated and weird, just
exactly,
like
it's
we
just like
are.
we are, 100%.
If only we could get along long enough
I know,
not to
right?
decloak and
Not
stab each
just
other.
to make FTLs. That's all we need, right?
Well, they
Like,
did it. They did it first.
yes, they did.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they got the first one then. So that's like some stuff about the Batra, kind of a macro scale set of information. There'll be more in the rulebook lore, and I'm sure there'll be lots of drilled down in depth questions.
Sure.
Some of which might be in the listener questions, which I have right next to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna go hop into that next.
Yeah, we are.
Ooh.
Ooh, all right. So we've got Beanix asks, um, it was Batra have honor duels usually when they are. Oh, I think this was in reference to uh, the Batra joining forces with non-Batra. They would not honor duel
Oh, other
other
races.
races. No,
Yeah.
no. The honor duel is they're very ritualized scenarios that are for settling disputes within their own society. Sir Parrot says, "Do any realm citizens play any tabletop miniatures games, like tiny versions of?"
I mean,
Yeah,
you've seen them all with the
yeah.
Space Marine.
40K is very popular in our
Yeah,
realms.
I was gonna say you've seen the Space Marine playing with the Space Marine on the table, right? Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I would assume that there would be some people who are interested in that. Although it must be pretty peculiar, uh, because you could use the fabricator and make any models that you wanted.
sure.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, there's more. It's very similar to Star Trek, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
they have a much worse replicator essentially,
cool,
right?
cool.
Wichita asks, "Do Hexagota harvest the blood of slain foes for hydrocarbons?" Well, they actually take all the bodies and put them into biomass pits where the micelle, which is their omni fungus food stuff, basically,
Oh, okay.
can grow on it and then turn it into more micelle, which they can eat.
It's basically like a mold almost, right?
It's
Like
a super
super
fungus.
fungus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they actually genetically cultivated it. It's their primary crop.
that's awesome. I got a question for you.
Yeah,
Could other races eat that fungus also?
probably actually.
Okay.
I would think that it would have some stuff in it that would be pretty unsavory.
Right. I mean, it's grown from like body parts or like other
I don't even
things.
just mean that. I just mean like the balance of what they're looking for from like a trace chemical and
Oh,
minerals and
sure.
stuff. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean it is nutritious,
Cool.
so that's
Okay.
interesting. The Epic Space Marine asks, "I know entropic fields basically become sludge when the Nightfall are killed, but what about the rest of their gear?" Well, we answered this in the last episode. Entropic fields just stop working. It's a field that they generate. Their internals, not their shells, but their internals become that liquidy sludge that we discussed. So that would be, they don't really carry war gear. They've got the stuff that's attached to them.
Right.
Yeah, all the important electronics and data and everything are destroyed.
The only thing that they keep are sad feels
That's
when they
right.
die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Just a one tier, one metal
Yeah,
tier
the one
down the one eye.
yeah, down the one eye, the one teardrop.
Corvus asks, "Are the hex capable of reverse engineering Nightfall or Batra technology?" I would say if they could get a Nightfall that was operational, not trying to kill them, and doesn't suicide itself, sure.
It's
They
like
over time they could pull that off. That seems unlikely, but yeah. And then Batra technology, of course. Like it's technology. If they had it and they had enough time, they could do it. Yes. The answer to that is yes.
leads me to another question.
Yeah.
If you want me to dive in,
Yeah.
if the Batra or Realm or Hexagoda were able to capture like a single Nifal like being,
Yeah.
right? Like one of those robots, does it self destruct or would
Once
it?
it realizes what's happening,
Yeah,
the node will cut it off.
interesting. Okay, so it will then destroy itself
Yeah.
essentially and become that liquid in the
Yeah,
armor
well, it
left
just
behind.
becomes a broken shell full of melted stuff.
Exactly. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, because they understand that their technology is they do not want it falling into the
Yeah,
wrong
people
hands.
to use it against them, that sort of thing. Cool.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
theoretically, if you could get like a bunch of cleansers in like a burlap sack. You can throw it into space and they'll kill themselves. It's probably more efficient to shoot them,
It's gonna
but
cost more than 1 AP, right? To
it would,
cleanse?
it would,
Yeah.
yeah, at least three, at least three. The Speedy Gold 789 asks, who manufactures Batra ships? Do they have some kind of mega corporation, or does each clan have their designated shipbuilders?
Well, I like this question.
And especially apropos for the discussion earlier. Uh, so the Batra essentially have clans that specialize in this, and they contribute that knowledge and expertise in those ships to other clans. I think it's more interesting to ask how they treat that property in general. So every major clan has resources that are the clans. In their case, like advanced machinery,
Okay.
advanced everything, right? Big stuff.
Excellent. Yeah.
And so when the clan wants to do something, they have to, like, let's say you're a sub clan and you want to go to war and you're like, man, I really want to go fight this thing.
Hmm.
You have to petition the main clan for use of clan resources to go and do the thing.
Well, that makes sense. Like, you can't just, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go. We don't have this, right? Like, well,
Right.
why
I
do you
mean,
want to?
it's just big ticket items, right? Like Batra
Yes.
have what they need to live, and they have communities, and they have food, and they have medicine, they have education, but they don't have, like, if it's more complex than what we would consider a car,
Hmm.
owning it personally is extremely unusual.
Got it. There has to be a
The
reason.
clan owns it,
Yeah.
right? It becomes like you could, I suppose, a really enterprising Batra could like somehow own a ship, but it would be really odd. It would be like it'd be unusual. It's not impossible, but it'd be very unusual.
Right. Well, there has to be
It
a
run,
reason for it then, right?
it'd be
Like, yeah.
counterintuitive to how they sort of think of things. Like that, like they they start to get they don't want to own a lot of stuff in general. Um, they travel light. They don't have a lot of personal possessions. Um, Things do not have the same attachment to them as we have to our things.
Interesting.
Like they
Okay.
consider like a normal house would be a terrifying museum of
Right.
things that were 98%
Right.
useless.
They'd be, was it the Knives Out? They're looking at a house. They're like, it doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
I mean, it does because
But
they
it,
know it's a shelter. They
yeah.
know that it has all the things that we need to survive. But
Right.
like they would have like three sets of pretty flexible clothing
Right.
that they can carry around in a small pack, and
Right.
we would have 98 outfits in a closet. And
Right.
it's like, well, I don't understand
Why?
why. What do these do?
Yeah.
Which biome does this one help you with?
Right.
Well,
Why?
they work in multiple biomes.
Why are
Well,
there?
then you just need the one, right?
Right.
Do 98 of you live here?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Do not. What are these miniatures? What are the
Like,
dice for?
like,
What is this?
like that is a they would understand art, but like us, they would go to a museum where art is kept, or they would have small art items of their own. But that'd be like one of their few possessions, and if it's valuable enough, the tendency is to pass it up. So like the clutch would own it.
Got it. And it's more. Yeah. And it goes back to their how they were made and born and raised.
Yeah,
They were raised together. So
yeah,
it's not like I own this individually. It's we own this.
yeah.
And there's
Well,
always a reason for it.
and
Or
owning is weird.
yeah, you're
They
right.
don't
Owning is
even
not the word I should have
correct.
used, but
Like owning is odd. Having this right now would be closer.
hmm hmm
Like I am the caretaker of this for the moment,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Like, but the caretaker of something forever would be like a really big weight on them.
yes. It'd be very emotionally
Well, yeah, they don't want it. It's
right,
like I don't they because they're expected to move around, they're expected to travel throughout their lives, they're expected to, you know, do what they want. Now, and it change, right? Like Batra's minds change more fluidly than ours. They might do something and their lives are so much longer, so the time scales are interesting. Like if they want to try something out, spending a decade on it is not a big deal
right.
because they have many, many, many decades ahead of them.
Hmm.
So like if you want to go and see what farming is like and you spend 10 years farming and you decide like, okay, that was fun, I'm going to go do something else. Like you've in 10 years you've gotten pretty okay at it,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
you did it for 10 years, so it was useful.
right.
But like 10 years to a botcher is like, okay, like that's fine. Now what else?
Yeah,
Do you want to keep doing that? Do you want to do a different kind? Do you want to go on a big hunt? Do you want to go
Right.
work in this factory and do that? Like you like working with your hands, so like let's go build some
Mm-hmm.
things. Like, oh, I want to
Mm-hmm.
try this. Oh, I built star drives for 15 years. I'm like, okay, now what? Like I want to now I'm gonna. They feel the calling of moving on.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now
Okay.
you do get ones that are entranced by something their whole lives, and that's what they dedicate themselves to.
Okay.
But other Batra think that's pretty odd.
Interesting. Yeah, so they don't like the guy that sits in the basement, right? There's no
I
botcher
mean,
that's in the basement doing their
we
own
have the
thing,
same
or
thing where we have people who obsess over one thing. They
right,
have the
right.
same thing too, but they think it's even weirder, especially the
Interesting.
longer you do it.
Oh no,
Right? If you
they live
well,
pretty long,
so you'll
so.
have people who are masters of like a particular melee weapon, like they're
Oh
masters of that,
yeah.
and they'll do it for hundreds of years. But like, that's not the only thing they're doing.
Right, right, right. It's a
If it was
hobby as
all they were
opposed to
doing, that would be bizarre.
right. Well, it also doesn't make sense. Like it's not real, right? In
Right.
like a story sort of sense and purpose on
Yeah,
that.
and they are even more fluid than we are, and they have longer lives in which to flit about and
To do
be
those
to do
things.
those things. Yeah, they think very differently than we do, which makes sense because they're aliens.
Yeah. To us.
Yeah, to us.
Sorry, I was
No,
like,
no, you're
yes.
right. You're right. Wichita asks, "What major religions are for the realm of the Batra?" The major religions in the realm, all the big ones made it through the conversion process. They're all propagated out there, the ones you'd expect.
Sure.
The largest religion in the realm is the Church of the Braid. It is a Christianity offshoot, essentially, that has the politics and governmental bolting on because of their process of the sovereign
Oh,
and all
sure.
that. So,
I thought you were gonna start talking about hair,
oh yeah,
right?
oh
Like the
no, yeah. If
braid.
you have
Yeah.
one big braid,
Yep.
it's
One
you're
big
in.
braid.
Two braids is out. One braid is in.
Excellent. Excellent.
And the Batra have a type of spiritualism that they follow. We talked about it a little bit in the rule book, but essentially, uh, defining your own path and
Ooh.
going down
Oh,
that.
that's so cool.
Yeah. All right. Wichita says, "What are Major Gunderson Omega groups?" So he's part of Omega Group. But what is Major Gunderson's thoughts on the Flame Pod? Because I don't think there was a quote on the card.
Oh yeah.
If you read all those other cards, you probably could figure out what he thinks of the
I was gonna
of
say,
the of the Flame Pod.
explain this real quick because I know the name of the person,
Yeah,
but I
so
don't
there's one
know.
quote, one person is quoted on every single Hexagona unit card,
Okay.
and
Oh,
that's
that's
Major
right.
Gunderson. He
Major.
is the
Yeah.
leading military expert on battling the Hexagona. He's been doing it for over 30 years
Excellent. Excellent.
for the realm. And he respects them because he knows how dangerous they are. And
Okay.
he was part of the team that first encountered them.
Yes.
He's a survivor of that encounter.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, he has a big respect for them, but he also knows how dangerous they are. He understands the scale of the threat, and the flame bugs. Exactly what you'd expect. Like they set things on fire. We don't like being on fire. That's bad.
Yep.
Um, so
Well, there you
just
go.
I can't come up with a quote off the top of my head for him, but if you read the other ones, you could pretty much figure out what he'd think
I mean,
of them. Like if
the
they're big
whole
and
yeah,
dangerous,
the whole like movie Starship Troopers is like
right?
the best bug is a dead bug,
Yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
yeah.
The Epic Space Marine asks, "Have any realm soldiers become pirates?" Oh yes, yeah, 100% that has happened. So
Oh,
a danger in any military organization with highly autonomous and highly you know soldiers that are designed to think for themselves and operate as their own thing, and that the unit comes first before everything else, can definitely generate a situation where they decide to become their own unit,
sure.
operating for themselves.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Man, and Batra would see that as like really strange, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
they're in it for them, not
Yeah. Well,
the.
they watch the Unbound pirates attack realm stuff, so they know
Oh,
that
interesting.
humans beat up on each other.
Got it. Okay.
They're very familiar. Corvid asks, "Hexagona don't think we humans are edible. Are hexagona edible?" This was asked last month, so I missed that.
Mm-hmm.
So please refer to our previous episode about that. The Epic Space Marine, has the realm ever like melted down the bodies of slain Nightfall to make weapons for new realm soldiers? No, but they have totally harvested that sludge and then broke it back down into fabricators and used it. So actually, nightfall pieces are valuable.
And they're
Fabricators,
usable,
yeah, they
right?
can be broken down in fabricators and
Cool.
used for other things. Yeah,
Excellent.
100% value. What is the government? Oh, Tubbs asks, what is the government structure like for the Batra? He works for a government, so this is very funny to me. By the way, the realm reminds me very much of the Holy Roman Empire with all of its houses, but it made me wonder about my beloved frogs. So the government is the big clans essentially, are the ruling classes. So think of each clan as like a state. That's probably the right way to go about it,
Okay.
with all of its subsequent sub clans and attendant pieces.
Hmm.
Clan loyalty is very fluid, so a sub clan might jump around to where its interests lie.
Sure.
And as you might imagine, like in any political system, there is the currying of favor. Like if your clan produces weapons, I'm going to curry a lot of favor with you to try to keep you
You
interested in
want
what
those
we want to do.
weapons.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Because it increases the clan's power.
Of
So
course.
that's where their political infighting and everything
Ah,
takes
I
place.
see. Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Let's see, we've got the Epic Space Marine. Is there any like war crimes that are not allowed in combat versus realm for realm on realm? Yes. So the edicts talk about lessening the habitability of a golden world, which is not permissible. Anything that would lessen the habitability of it. So anything chemical, nanite, nuclear, all that stuff is off the table.
Oh,
And in general, that's not just against realm versus realm. They're not allowed to do that at all.
wow.
Now they
Okay.
can engage in some pretty nasty combat, like in space, because there's
Right.
another
Okay.
our
Yeah.
space station,
Yeah.
or non golden worlds, right? You can get
Right.
pretty spicy there.
Yeah.
But the tendency is they tend to stay in their doctrine, so they know operationally what their capabilities are. Those weapons, like a nuclear weapon, is a very interesting thing. A nuclear weapon is very good at destroying a lot of stuff. Generally, if you're fighting for a place or a thing, a nuclear weapon's not going to help you.
It's not going to do anything good. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, you'll win the fight, but you end up with a sender,
Yep.
which is not the goal.
Yep. It's not what you
Um,
want.
yeah, so the tendency has pushed pretty far away from that style of thought. They tend to stay in their doctrine and win their battles with the weapons that they have. Wichita asks, "Is chemical and/or biological warfare banned under the edicts for interhouse conflicts?" It's very similar to Epic Space Marine's question. Absolutely, like they do not. It is non-permissible. Um, the edicts are there to protect Golden Worlds and to help regulate warfare between the houses to some extent, so it doesn't
Yeah.
turn back
Into
into
the
the Golden
yeah.
Rush,
Right.
right?
I mean, it makes sense that you wouldn't use weapons that would damage what you
Well,
need
yeah, and
in the process of
it's not the
winning. It's
tendency
not.
anyway,
Yeah.
especially when they're not trying to kill non-military assets
one Hundred
too.
percent.
It's very hard to control the vectors of these weapons once
Mm-hmm.
they've been launched,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that's not what the realm is about. So they don't really do that. Well, do you have any questions for us, Drew, on this awesome episode too?
No, I peppered my questions in
Yeah,
with others as they come
yeah,
up, and I'm like, oh, interesting. I feel like I've got more on the Nafal, but they don't come to mind. So we'll maybe get to them
yeah.
in a
Well, in
different
two episodes,
in 2 episodes.
right?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, everyone, stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.
Bye bye.